Hi guys, welcome. So there's a lot happening in the collective at the moment. I've got a little field update, or quite a big field update for you guys at the moment. Just stuff that I'm seeing with my one-on-ones that is important for the collective. So I thought I'd do a field update. Now, obviously, I took a little bit of a break from, some of you noticed I wasn't posting as much. I was still posting every day, but like not as relentlessly as before, both on Instagram and on here. Just, for my mental health, y'all know I've been following the situation in Palestine, and it's been a lot. So for those of you that are paying attention to that, this is your invitation. Not that you need an invitation from me, but just please take a mental health break if you need one. Like, I'm the type of person who I know firsthand what it's like to experience like major depression, like the kind that makes you want to end it all tomorrow. Sorry to start this off on a bad note, but like once that, like I developed in that time, that this was many years ago, but like in that time I developed some really effective coping strategies to the point where I've never, touch wood, touch metal, touch wood, touch Palo Santo, I've never had to go through that again. Because I can feel when I'm slipping, and I can feel when my thoughts are kind of getting out of control into like too much of a negative spiral. Once that negative spiral starts to take hold, it's really difficult to get out of it. Like once it really starts to like affect your brain chemistry and your energy levels and your sleep and your relationships and your work, and your life starts being impacted in a negative way, it can be much more difficult to change, and to get out of. So, you don't want to get to that point. If it happens, then, sometimes there's a reason why that happens, because maybe things in your life are not, are out of alignment. So sometimes depression can actually be a gift. But if you feel yourself slipping, just take a break, because I've just seen that a lot of people, particularly people who are really actively engaged in activism at the moment, have not been taking those breaks, and it's not just been harmful to them, but it's even been harmful to what we're trying to achieve here on this planet, as an awakening collective. So do make sure that you are taking care of your mental health, because if you're under-resourced, then you can't be a support to other people. There's no way that you can pour from an empty cup. You need to be fully resourced. So for me, I had, because the energies are so intense, it's not just for those of us who are engaged in what's happening in Palestine at the moment, but everybody, well, I don't know if everybody, but a lot of people I know have been feeling the shifts that are happening on the planet right now, huge geopolitical changes, which, obviously our outer worlds are a reflection of our inner world. So if there's turbulence on the external world stage, it's reflecting the inner turbulence that's within. So a lot of people are going through a lot right now. If you are going through it right now, know that you're not alone. There's a lot of things happening, things are shifting with people's union templates, which I'm going to talk about, with people's health. Obviously we're seeing like long-term effects from the jabs, which I'm going to touch on a little bit, just we're seeing like the fall of Western Empire. Those of you that have done your history, every empire on this earth has fallen. And any empire that is founded on supremacy and dominance and not founded on God, as most empires on this planet haven't been or have been imbalanced, will end up destroying themselves. And we're kind of seeing that happen. I'm not saying that it's going to happen overnight or that it's going to happen like in the next year. We're talking about this is a thing that's going to unfold over, I don't want to give a time scale, because I'm not a prophet, and I actually don't believe that anybody can say exactly how this is going to go or exactly how long it's going to take, but probably, over the next decade as more and more things are revealed on the world stage. I mean, right now a lot of people are seeing how our government institutions, all the alphabet agencies, just the whole international law thing is just not just useless, but more than useless. Set up to serve the powerful at the expense of those with the least power. So, you know, I think a lot of people are waking up to just the whole idea of authority, the whole idea of statism in general. I mean, I don't want to be over optimistic. I think a lot of people I'm still seeing a lot of people being like, oh, we should vote for this person, we should vote for that person, I'm never voting for Genocide Joe again, and what about this candidate, what about that candidate? People still thinking that voting is gonna, I mean, look, I'm not saying that like voting for a better candidate can't help a little bit, but a lot of people are realizing that the game is rigged, and just the whole idea of international law is just a joke. A lot of, you know, I'm seeing a lot of conversations being had in not so much mainstream. I mean, most people know now that the mainstream corporate media is just a joke, that it's just propaganda, they're just lying to everyone. But the alternative media, who are also, you know, tend to be a bit more mainstream, are also starting to realize that international law is just a joke. Like it's applied selectively, you know, they use it when it suits them, but you know, if you actually need to be able to stop a genocide against a major world superpower, not you know, not saying that Israel is necessarily a major world superpower, but I think a lot of people are realizing what Israel is, not just that it's a settler colonial state, but that it's a satellite state and a military outpost of the United States. That is like, the United States is like the military arm of the beast system. The UK is the financial centre, the City of London is the financial centre of the beast system. Rome is the spiritual, or rather the Antichrist centre of the beast system. So, you know, these are the truths that I don't want to say like everybody's waking up to now, but it's slowly gonna start to become more and more obvious and more clear to people as more and more gets disclosed. You know, what's happening in Gaza right now is also dovetailing with, you know, the disclosure of the Epstein documents, and the fact that Epstein was a Mossad, you know, Israeli intelligence asset that was, you know, designed to blackmail certain powerful actors and politicians, you know, with, you know, getting them into compromising situations with underage, you know, with trafficked children, basically, in order to control them. Obviously they have to be corruptible to be controlled, but a lot of them are, you know, so people are realizing that. Obviously I'm not saying that every person in a position of power is, you know, implicated, but a lot of them are, and a lot of them have been complicit. I mean, we're seeing now how many of them are actually, you know, are complicit. I mean, even we're realizing even ourselves, like we're complicit, like, you know, as a person in the UK, people in the UK, we pay taxes, right? I spoke in my previous video about war tax resistance. It was actually one of the reasons why I continued modeling for so long, because with my awakening, obviously I started waking up to the whole 9/11 thing when I was in my early 20s, and I got very involved in like 9/11 truth and anti-war activism. So that's when I was first exposed to the idea of war tax resistance, and when I started to become more and more, it took me a while before I was really like became very clear about what government is and about, you know, the satanic agenda, but the idea of like government's illegitimacy when, particularly when engaged in wars of aggression, and how war tax resistance can be a very, very important tool of protest, and it is actually lawful. Like, you know, governments can still try and, you know, get you for it, and there's different layers of legality, but like there's a difference between legal and lawful. Like legal is basically you've entered into a contract, an energetic contract, or a, like a, you know, not even like a social contract, but like even like a slave contract that we have as citizens of a country through the birth certificate fraud. Obviously I'm going quite a little bit deeper now. Through the birth certificate fraud, they basically take a bond out on your head when your birth is registered to the state. So that bond is like puts you in bondage. It makes you like a human resource, like basically a resource of the state, like the state owns you. So the contracts that we have with the state is that we will give our sweat equity to the state. So states basically operate like mafias. They're no different from mafias, and they take the money through our tax money through threat of violence and use it for whatever they want to use it for. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be that there shouldn't be some kind of social contract where we contribute to society and schools and hospitals and roads and things like that. But if we don't have a choice about how that money is spent, then essentially we are slaves. So if those of you who've done your research will know about the Haitian Revolution and how, after the Haitian Revolution, they actually stopped the transatlantic slave trade, not out of the goodness of their hearts or because they suddenly awoke to the fact that racism is wrong and enslavement is wrong, but because it just became too expensive. So they switched back to the indentured servitude model, and that's what we have now. But, there are still people who are enslaved, obviously. There are more people enslaved today than there were during the transatlantic slave trade. So, a lot of these things are part of the awakening that's happening now. Same with like the prison industrial complex. And I'm seeing the awakening happening on both sides, of the left-right bipartisan divide, which is again another like controlled opposition agenda to divide people. But they'll use very sophisticated tactics to divide people, like things like QAnon, to turn like, people who are awakening to the satanic agenda, funneling them into this Trump white hat timeline. These are the saviors who are going to take out the baddies, and just creating this left to right divide, when actually otherwise people would have come together and they would have completely overthrown these control systems, but they were made complacent by the whole QAnon. And I'm thinking about doing a whole video on how QAnon hijacked the awakening movement and turned it into a partisan issue, because I do want to, now that I'm getting so many like people who are speaking up for Palestine coming into my sphere and who are new to my work, I want to clarify my position on all that, because people can get very polarized about stuff like that. They'll see that if you start talking about like some kind of government satanic agenda or elite trafficking conspiracy stuff, then they think that you're a Trumpist, and I'm absolutely not a Trumpist. I am conservative on some issues. I'm very extreme left on other issues, and extreme, so a lot of people on the left-right divide call me an extremist in so many ways. So, just welcome if you're new here. Stick around. Don't expect to agree with everything that I say, because I'm just one person who's learning, and I'm on my awakening journey, just like y'all, and I'm sharing it with people. So yeah, like that's my position on that whole Trump thing. Like, there is a satanic agenda, there are elite trafficking rings, there is satanic ritual abuse, but it's not like a left-right thing, and I don't think Donald Trump is the savior. I think that there's a war that's been happening between some really, really evil people against some people who are maybe slightly less evil, but they're not like the good guys, and they have their own agenda, and they are backed by the Zionists. So, a lot of people need to get with the program with how this whole Israel issue feeds into the whole QAnon thing, because a lot of people are going, let's vote for Trump because he's not like a genocider, but Trump is like a total Zionist. He's converted to Chabad Lubavitch. I think his son-in-law, what's his name, Jared Kushner, is Chabad Lubavitch, which is basically like a sect of Messianic Judaism, where they believe in accelerating the coming of the Moshiach. by, bringing about this kind of holy war that was prophesied in the three Abrahamic faiths, and building the third temple in Jerusalem, and having having Jerusalem be the center of the new world order, and have everybody ruled under one world religion, which is the Noahide laws. So, that's some stuff that you don't know about all of that stuff, then, we'll talk about it more here. But yes, interesting with the ICJ ruling. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Look, I want to believe in it, but I lost my faith in all these systems many years ago. I was just like, they're all corrupt. In fact, I got very, very polarized into thinking that they were completely, every single one of them was just completely infiltrated and corrupt, and that they were all part of the satanic agenda. I don't have such polarized views anymore. I think as you start to heal your own inner polarities, and you start to do your own shadow work, and you start to recognize how we're all very, very complicit within this system, and the higher up you go, the more complicit you become in a system that dominates the earth, indigenous people, animals, the land, just the divine feminine, that this reptilian misogynistic force that's been enslaving humanity, because we are fractals of Sophia, we are fractals of the Divine Mother, we are fractals of Pachamama, Gaia, who is a fractal of the Divine Feminine. It's been subjugating and enslaving us, and seducing us into becoming one with it, becoming complicit with it. So, this earth is a test. It's, are you going to choose God, or are you going to choose the enemy? And where have you chosen God, and where have you chosen the enemy? And once you start to see things like that with a bit more nuance, you can see that these agencies are, there's a lot of people who are trying to do their best, but they're doing it within a system that has been corrupted and infiltrated. And if you listen to interviews with people who work for like the UN or the ICJ or the ICC, you'll get that. Like, you'll see that, like, a lot of them are being threatened, just like with the whole Epstein thing, or even if they couldn't be corrupted, it was, it's kind of just like the higher you move up, like, if you don't do what we tell you, we're going to hurt you, we're going to hurt your family, we're going to destroy your livelihood. I mean, many of us are seeing that the more that we stand for God, the more we stand for truth, the more we stand for justice, the more the enemy and this narcissistic, reptilian, misogynistic, antichrist force and its flying monkeys will try and suppress you, will try and fuck with you, will try and, just, destroy your livelihood, make your life difficult, and this, it works on a deep level. It works on like the dark forces, demonic forces getting into people's light bodies through their wounding. Like, the deception is so insidious, and it's been happening for so long because it's infiltrated even our religions. I've talked about, Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, and how the obfuscation of the text, where they basically attributed so many passages that were attributed to Yahweh or other fallen Elohim to God. They just use those words interchangeably, but Yahweh's not God, Yahweh's not the Most High. And if you read the Old Testament, you will see God would never agree with like exterminating bloodlines. God would never tell you to like, destroy other people, like destroy women, children, animals, burn houses. God would never tell you to enslave others. It's just, I just really hope that people wake up to that. But people want to hold on to things that they've held on to for generations, that like, I understand it's hard to break the programming. And everybody's, so wounded and traumatized by, all the bloodline trauma that we've been experiencing on this planet, all the war timelines, the targeting of our union templates with the masculine feminine split, which I'm going to talk about as well, because there's a massive curse in there's a bloodline curse with the masculines that's been clearing as well, so we're going to talk about that as well. So yeah, with the ICJ ruling, I don't think that we need to like be completely despondent and be like, oh, they're useless, they're not doing anything. I think that they're trying their best. They're doing their best within a broken system. All of us are doing our best. We're doing what we can. I mean, I'd love to kind of go to Gaza and just help, like physically help people and like fight people who are like committing genocide and, you know, literally get aid into people's mouths and stuff like that. But, you know, everybody just has to do what they can. You know, if what you can do is write letters, then write letters. You know, I know a lot of people have lost faith also in, you know, writing to MPs. I feel very despondent about writing to my MP, especially because my MP he's like one of the conservative Friends of Israel, which is the US equivalent of that would be like he's bought by AIPAC. Like Friends of Israel is like our version of AIPAC. So he's like, I wrote to him at the start of this and he came out with a load of Zionist nonsense, and it just, it really upset me. And then I sat on it for a week, and then I replied again, and I gave him like indisputable evidence of genocidal intent. I was just like, you've got this defense minister that said this, you've got the prime minister that said this, you've got the ambassador to the UK who said this, you've got this guy Ezra Yakin, who was hired by the Israeli occupation forces to boost morale, and he's like he committed a massacre in Yadassin during the 1948 Nakba, telling people to just kill everyone, to kill every woman, to kill every child, to erase the memory of them. I gave like quotes like showing clear genocidal intent. Like this is it's not just the most well documented genocide in history because of, you know, journalists on the ground who are literally posting videos showing like the brutal reality of what's happening to them, and that's, you know, extremely traumatic for all of them and for all of us bearing witness as well. But it's just exposing Israel, and then you've got the Israeli media that are just no holds barred, just being completely brazen with their genocidal intent. Then you still have some people denying that there's a genocide happening. I'm like, are you Delulu? Like, are you okay? Like, are you right in the head? Like, you're insane. Like, you're literally insane. Like, how am I sharing the planet with these people? And I find it crazy that people, I hear some people going, oh, what do you expect? You know, this is the world, it's fucking evil. And I get that, but it's just a very nihilistic worldview. I do think that humanity can do better. I do think that our true nature is love. Our true nature is good. Our true nature is unity consciousness. When we connect to that, I know it sounds a bit kumbaya, because I'm also very realistic about the traumas that we face on this planet and how those traumas cause us to act out and continue perpetuating all these, just continue to perpetuate the cycle of trauma, and continue with all these, you know, bloodline curses and things like that really need to be cleared, which is why the ancestral healing is going to be so important going forward. So I started doing a lot of ancestral clearing with my one-on-ones. Hopefully, I'm just doing my website at the moment, and I have a lot on my plate right now, but in the future I want to be bringing a lot of like group clearings that will be much more accessibly priced than my one-on-ones, so that we can do, you know, the work of clearing the ancestral bloodlines. My 12 tribes webinar is going to go into this as well whenever that's ready. It's, you know, y'all know it's a huge subject, so it's taking some time. So please be patient with that. But like, if you want to do some bloodline clearing just through your own ancestry, then contact me about a one-on-one. We can definitely do that together. So, you know, a lot of people are realizing that the problem has been giving away our power to these false authorities, not just in terms of geopolitically, like one country or a few countries, particularly Western countries that dominate others. but even just allowing governments to dominate us just within our own nation states. So, you know, I think that we will be moving more towards like an anarchist-based system, not overnight. It's not going to be a thing that happens overnight. It's going to move from like, you know, it's moving from like Western hegemony dominating everyone, and I'm seeing the shift as the global South countries rise up against this bully. And, you know, the rise of the BRICS nations and, you know, the lessening of the power of the petrodollar. A lot of countries are not fucking with the petrodollar anymore. You know, this is going to really, it's going to undermine Western hegemony in the world, which is a great thing, you know. An end to inequality and a more equal world we're going to see less wars, we're going to see less racism, we're going to see less trafficking, because y'all know, like, trafficking of children that happens, you know, with the satanic networks, those children are trafficked from the most vulnerable communities. They're usually like indigenous children. You know, y'all saw Sound of Freedom, I saw that the other day as well, or Haiti, or some of these countries that have been historically, not just historically, but continue to be oppressed and subjugated. Like Haiti, for example, a lot of people who are following QAnon will know that Haiti is one of the biggest trafficking feeder nations. Like, so many children were trafficked, you know, via the Clinton Foundation into these satanic networks. A lot of people are waking up to the Clintons as well through all of this Epstein link. So, you know, these are all good things, but it's obviously devastating that we're seeing so much carnage happening in the Middle East, and I'll talk about that as well. But with Haiti, the point that I wanted to make was, you know, that Haiti, after the Haitian Revolution, where they fought against, you know, the slave masters, and there was a very brutal reprisal attack as well, where they like cut off the heads of the ringleaders of the slave rebellion, and like put their heads on spikes to, like, you know, really send a message that, you know, you're not going to do this again. But eventually they formed a treaty with the Haitians, where they said, okay, we're not going to enslave you anymore, you can have your freedom, but you have to pay us. So Haiti has been paying France compensation for their lost property because of the slaves that they bought until this day. Like, that's still happening. Like, this is why people need to do the, you know, you can call it decolonization work, but it's really just being a truth seeker. Like, you know, I'm so sick of people in the awakening community being like, oh, this left is and the right is. Just be a fucking truth seeker. If you're for humanity, you will do the decolonization work of studying what's, you know, the history of what's happened on this planet, and how people, particularly the most melanated people on this planet, have been subjugated, and why. And we're, you know, why is a really deep subject. We're going to touch on it in the 12 Tribes webinar. We're going to go into some of the history around these bloodlines. I know I'm posting so many teasers for the 12 Tribes webinar, and I know it's a little bit unfair because it's not ready yet. I don't want to be a tease, but like, I've been so actively engaged in the research, and it's initiating me so deeply into this work. It's also really bringing me very, very close to Ishtar. I'm getting so much clarity around, you know, and I haven't really told the story of how I came to take the moniker of Ishtar and my connection with her, because it wasn't that clear to me in the beginning. Like, you know, I can tell the story another time, because it's a full, really, really in-depth story to do with my own Hieros Gamos journey, my journey of inner alchemy. And I didn't know that she was the goddess of Hieros Gamos, and that she had temples dedicated to Hieros Gamos and the priestesses at the time that I took the name. But yeah, I feel so close to her, and I felt so close to her the last few months. She's a goddess of love and war, and not like war in, like, you know, fighting like a war of aggression, because y'all know I'm absolutely not about that. That is a violation against universal law. She was very clear on universal law. She was, if you read the Sumerian tablets, she actually taught humans about universal law. But she was about natural justice and about, you know, the principle of self-defense and rules of engagement around that. You know, if you read the poem that she wrote to Dumuzi, or the poem that's written about her, between her and her lover Dumuzi, who is this farmer or shepherd, you know, this shepherd symbolism, you know, it's a lot of like Christ masculine symbolism. And it's a very sexy poem, which Song of Solomon is also based upon. She literally says in that poem, I will lead you into battle. So it's bringing me really, really close to those priestess lineages and the purpose of them, how they initiated the men that were the warriors who would defend the sacred and who would defend the honor of the feminine and who would defend righteousness. But obviously not violating universal law, not like killing somebody who wasn't already, like if somebody's coming to attack you and your family, then yes, you can kill them in self-defense, but you can't go and, you know, invade others. And international law is pretty clear about this. Like Israel's 100% violating international law by going into Gaza and going into Palestinian territories. Like the law is very clear about war. Like war is actually completely illegal according to international law. You're not allowed to invade other countries. Like if you get invaded, you're allowed to fight back against the people that have invaded you up until your own borders. That's it. Like I learned about all of this when I was doing anti-war activism. Like go to Stop the War Coalition, and you know they give you all this information. Most people don't, you know, they believe what they see on the media, which is obviously like a very warmongery, you know, most of the corporate media is controlled by the deep state and mostly the US and also the Zionists, and they are just bloodthirsty warmongers. You know, they love to participate in mass human sacrifice, and that's what a lot of these wars are, particularly in the Middle East. Why? Because that is, I don't want to say it's like the cradle of civilization, but it's a lot of where the bloodlines, a lot of the bloodlines that we're dealing with on the planet now, and these like bloodline wars that we're having, emanate from this area and from the Great Flood, you know, which was, you know, the Younger Dryas. And, you know, go back to ancient Sumeria, which is ancient Iraq, and the Chaldees, and then, you know, over to the Levant area, you know, and ancient Egypt as well. So, you know, where do I want to go next? Okay, so I've put in my notes here, and I do want to touch on this. So, you know, a lot of people are also waking up to what's happening with the jabs and the jab agenda and what that was. Obviously I've not talked about it too much recently because I've been busy, you know, looking at what's happening in the Holy Land. But, you know, I am seeing a lot of people are waking up to these jabs and you know, I don't want to be like over optimistic and say that people are realizing that it was like a depopulation agenda. But a lot of people are realizing that they've done an incredible amount of harm, people that weren't open to it before. Like I've had clients that have come to me that said that, you know, family members that were completely against, you know, the truth that they were bringing forth about the jabs, and would, you know, to cast them out, made them like a pariah in the family, and all got them like, you know, boosted up, boost, and then someone in the family like just dies suddenly, or somebody has a serious adverse event, and now they're starting to listen. And that's been happening for a lot of people. I'm seeing also a lot of people, and this is obviously and this is what I do think that this was very intentional, that we're seeing a lot of people, you know, we're losing a lot of people from like very accelerated turbo cancers, and a lot of people haven't made the direct link between the jabs and the turbo cancers, but hopefully the more the truth comes out, that link will start to be made more and more. If you want to know more about, I recommend you follow Dr. John Campbell, who is a PhD nurse, and he has been analysing all the data since 2020. And he started off like, he got it in the beginning, and then he started looking at the data and he's like, something's really not right here. It was really interesting watching a medical professional get like slowly red pilled over time. Another person that you should watch is Sunil Dand. So that's an Indian name, Sunil, Suneel, and then Dhand. He's a British MD who was based in the United States and was part of the American medical big pharma complex, and he also got slowly red pilled over the course of the last few years, and I think he works as a health coach now. It's really, really interesting. So watch his videos, watch both of those videos, because I'm not a medical expert. I was just like, nah, because I'd done a lot of research into big pharma and see, this is how everything is connected. You look at the link between Big Pharma and Project Paperclip. What was Project Paperclip? Project Paperclip was basically where they made a deal with a bunch of Nazi scientists who had been experimenting on people who were detained in the concentration camps, mostly Jewish, but also, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, disabled people. They had all kinds of people interned in the concentration camps, and the Holocaust did. They were experimenting on people, and instead of putting them into jail or death sentence or whatever it was, Nuremberg I think was death sentence, they made a deal with some of the most elite scientists, these Nazi scientists, and said, if you come over to the States and help us with our scientific breakthroughs, we'll give you immunity from prosecution. And I actually heard recently that the Allies, trying to get rid of the Nazis and hold them all to account for what they had done during World War II, they actually abandoned that project. They weren't able to hold them all accountable. Some of them just were able to continue having political careers. So some of them continued with their political careers in Germany, some of them even had political careers in the United States. But yeah, look at the links between Big Pharma and Project Paperclip with these Nazi scientists, okay? Because these Nazi scientists were eugenicists. So if you think that there hasn't been like a depopulation agenda that's infiltrated Big Pharma, then you're very naive, is all I can say. So, though, like, Indigenous people and people from a colonized identity, I think we tend to be a little bit more skeptical because we've seen how pharmaceutical companies will use our people. Like in India, they used like tribal girls as guinea pigs and killed loads of them. They did it in Kenya as well, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I find it very insulting when people say that I'm a conspiracy theorist for suggesting that Big Pharma might not have our best interests at heart, especially when there's been so many like criminal prosecutions against them. So, and I'm not completely I'm not saying that everybody who's a doctor or everybody who's a pharmacist is evil. My uncle's a pharmacist. I've got really good friends who are doctors. Other members of my family in the medical industry. I just think that the programs are very insidious. Like, when you go to medical school, you're taught that this is this and this is this, and if you don't look more deeply into it than that, then you're just going to believe it. And it's the way that they infiltrate like the medical studies as well, and put out just poor quality medical studies that are funded by conflicts of interest. Like, you have to go really, really deep. I had my own awakening around it. I spoke about this in previous videos when I was given the Depo-Provera injection and it nearly killed me. And then I went and researched, just the fact that pharmaceutical companies will put synthetic hormones in female contraceptive medicine that mimic estrogen or progesterone in the body. They're not actually estrogen and progesterone. There's estrogens and progestogens, and we actually don't know. We don't know the full effect that they have on the human body. Like, they're they're foreign. Yeah, these are not natural hormones. So, you know, whether we know exactly what they do to the body or not, I don't know. But I would imagine that it's not within their interest to even look at these hormones. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would get really suppressed. The reason why they use synthetic hormones instead of natural hormones, I mean, they could synthesize natural hormones from like plants and things like that. Yams, I think, are a good source of natural progesterone, is because they want to be able to patent their product. So it's a profit thing. It's a profit over people thing. So yeah, that was just part of my awakening. Obviously, my mum did loads of research also on pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceuticals in general, and she's really into like natural alternative healing. She makes Ganar devices. We make our own colloidal silver at home. So yeah, I've talked about that in previous videos as well. So what was I saying about that? Yeah, so I spoke about Rainer Fulmich and the Corona committee that they set up, where they were basically going to bring all these bad actors before a tribunal, Nuremberg 2.0, right? So yeah, there were some issues with the Corona committee, but the last update I heard, which was a few months ago, so maybe I need to go back and check and see what's happening, but there's basically a court case that's happening in Australia. This is really exciting. There's a court case that's happening in Australia where the tribal elders, the indigenous courts, the Aboriginal courts, they obviously have their own courts and their own, you know, self-determination. They are basically suing the Australian government for, you know, crimes against humanity, experimenting on people, all the violations of, you know, universal law in keeping people in Australia they had people in internment camps. So that will be really, really interesting. And I think it's just this beautiful thing I'm seeing happening, you know, where the indigenous people of the earth are just rising up against the beast system. And I do think that is where the awakening is going to come from. It's, you know, those of us who are still kind of plugged into the system, you know, we can help, but I think that the indigenous people are really going to be leading the charge. So, you know, we're seeing that with Gaza, just how much like the Palestinians are just awakening people just with their sacrifice. And I'm not like, what's the word? I'm not like, what's the word that I want? I'm not glorifying their sacrifice or like glorifying martyrdom. I understand the concept of it, because definitely when we were going through the whole jab agenda, I was just like, this is the hill that I will die on. Like, they will have to kill me before I take that thing. No one is going to violate my sovereignty. So I understand the incredible strength and resolve that they have to fight back against oppression, that they're not going to leave their ancestral homeland, that they want people to awaken and to realize what's happening to them. They want people to see the truth. I've even heard some Palestinians say that, you know, I was listening to one interview from a Muslim revert he actually joined the Great March of Return, and he was just bowled over by the way that they would keep their spirits up while they were being attacked by Israeli snipers who were like shooting people in the kneecaps, shooting children. You know, these were unarmed people who were doing like a peaceful protest, and they were just shooting people, but they were able to like keep their spirits up. They had camps there, they were singing, and you know, and they were still maintaining their prayers and things like that. And he was just like, I don't know, like how do you have so much like strength and faith and belief, you know, in the face of like so much brutal like decades of occupation. And you know, they credited it all to God, like all glory to the Most High. Like, definitely I've never been through anything like that. I can't imagine how painful it must be. And I'm you know, I know that they're deeply, deeply suffering. I've made friends with people who are in Gaza right now, who I speak to, you know, regularly in the DMs, and I know that they're I don't want to say that they're like so resilient, and they're struggling just like anybody would in such unimaginable circumstances, but at the same time I can see also that their strength in God is giving them like a strength that I've never witnessed before. And again, what we're going to talk about in the 12 Tribes webinar, these are these ancient bloodlines that go back to the times of Ishur. Some of you know him as Jesus. That's not his name. His name's not Yeshua either. It's Ishur. That's the Aramaic version of his name, or Isa in Arabic. Yeshua, Isa are just translations of his original name, which was Ishur. They go back to the original followers. They are the ancient Essenes. They are the descendants of them. They are the original tribe of Judah, many of them. Not saying all of them. They're a combination. We'll talk about this in depth, and I'll show, like the genetics and, the cultural legacy as well. But just a teaser, many of you know this anyway, they were the original tribe of Judah, and the Canaanites, and the Philistines, which is why they're still called Palestine, and the Natufians. They've even shown genetic markers that trace them back like 10,000 years ago to the Natufians, who were the original farming communities in the Levant region. So they are indigenous. Okay, I'm not saying that the Jews that went into exile, there were some Jews who can trace their ancestry back to the Levant as well. Not all of them though. Ashkenazis, no. We're going to talk about that as well. But many can, and I get that they have an ancestral connection to the land, but not as, how is it that all these different tribes that have been found in India and in Africa, Ethiopia, China even, how are they more indigenous to the Levant than the people that have been there for thousands and thousands of years? They're not, right? So yeah. Yeah, I've got in my notes the Chabad-Lubavitch tunnels, the tunnels under the Chabad-Lubavitch Center in New York. And I'm going to talk about that right now, because I need to know a little bit more about what's happening with that. I did listen to some people who were talking about it. They were like, oh, they were trying to expand their headquarters, and they hadn't been given the planning permission, but they just decided to just go ahead and do it anyway. But I don't know, I think it's kind of shady. Maybe. So, okay, field updates. So one thing that I noticed when I was tuning in, so obviously I've been tuning into the grids around Gaza for months now, and what appeared to me in a dream one night, tuning into particularly Rafah, the Rafah border between Palestine and Egypt, I started coming out of the dream space, and I could just see this honeycomb geometry. Now, if you don't know, honeycomb and honeys and bees in general were very sacred to ancient Egyptians. They held a lot of symbolism that connected to them, to the goddess, the divine feminine. There were particular goddesses that it was connected to, but it's more about that divine feminine principle. Obviously, the queen bee is a female. One thing I find really interesting is in the Islamic text in the Quran, they actually say that the queen of the beehive is a female, and this was something that wasn't known at the time. Like, Western scientists took generations to realize that they actually thought that the worker bees were all male, and the queen, that it was actually a king bee. And they figured out, once their technology evolved and they were able to sex them, that they were actually all female. But in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was able to channel this information that they are, and maybe also it could have been within his lineage, because he was from the Quraysh tribe, which is the Ishmaelites, but he was also a Jew. He was also Jewish. His mother was Jewish, and I think one of his wives were Jewish as well. So Sayyids, like myself, for example, we also have Jewish lineage. So it's so many interesting things are coming out in my research. So it could have just been in his ancestry and within his lineage, because obviously Judaism borrowed a lot of things from Egyptology, which, you know, I'm some of that stuff is coming through, and we'll talk about it in future trainings and future transmissions that I do here. It may have been known by the Egyptians. It must have been known because it was connected to the goddess. You know, it's a symbol of divine feminine, bees. And so when I woke up, I was just like, this geometry, this hexagonal geometry, what does this mean? I'm like, it's a honeycomb. And I'm just like, ooh, I'm getting chills. I'm like, honeycomb, so what does that represent? And I could see, okay, I'm getting an intense download right now. Just literally chills down my body. It was basically about, because the bees in the hive, they all work together for a common goal to serve the queen, and the queen is in service and devotion to them as well. It's not like she's just this, you know, if she doesn't produce enough honey, they actually kill her quite brutally. But it's about the tribe, it's about the collective, and so it's in service and devotion to the feminine principle, working together for her. What is her? What is the primary sacred feminine principle? It's a principle of care, okay? And that is what is awakening through these grids, okay? This is what Palestine is teaching us, that we need to work together for the principle of care, for the principle of compassion, for the principle, for the collective, for unity consciousness, okay? And I understand, I'm not like saying that we should get into hard collectivism, because there's major issues with hard collectivism as well. It can become very tyrannical. I've spoken about it in previous videos. But we do need some of that balancing, okay? Because our society is becoming way, especially in the West, it's becoming way too individualistic and way too fascistic, and it needs to be brought back into balance. And then what did I see? Like, the first thing I saw when I woke up that day was, you know, turn on my phone, and obviously I see all the updates. I saw people from Egypt heading to the Rafah border with generators, so that people in Gaza can charge their phones so that they can stay connected to the outside world. So that was like really, really powerful, and a message that I wanted to share with everybody, for those of us who are watching, you know, that situation there. You know, keep going, keep working. We should be working as a collective. We should be working in community, okay? We're not going to do this alone. You know, we're going to get behind organizations like the International Center for Justice for Palestine, okay? They're a British organization fronted by an amazing human rights lawyer who has been working for decades to bring various bad actors in Israel to account for their war crimes against the Palestinian people. So, you know, fund organizations like that, you know, support Palestinian businesses. I'm going to do a thread on my Instagram where I'm going to promote some more Palestinian businesses, not just Palestinian businesses, but Palestinian creators, Palestinian business people. So, you know, when I say Palestinian businesses, I mean all types of Palestinian businesses, you know, like Palestinian photographers, Palestinian healers, Palestinian whatever they do, just support them. So yeah, and just in general, just supporting indigenous communities, because that is what's gonna topple this beast system. Like, I truly believe, like, returning to the land, returning to the feminine, and not like in a polarized way where we become like so imbalanced, because, you know, that is ultimately like, we still need to be like, have that masculine architecture, and still, you know, the principle of self-defense, and, you know, being strong, and, you know, maintaining sovereignty, so that, you know, it's not easy to subjugate us as people. So yes, what else am I seeing? Some more clearings from the Egyptian grids and the Egyptian timelines. One thing that I saw in the fields working with a particular client was Anubis. So Anubis was the Egyptian god of the underworld. He's an interesting character, okay? He's quite connected to Osiris, who is the counterpart of Isis, and they are a divine union, Isis and Osiris. So Osiris basically also became the god of the underworld, and then Anubis took a more more of a back seat. He was originally the god of the underworld, but he still maintains a position in the underworld, and his role is, if you're not aware, he does the scales of justice, where your heart, after passing, your heart will be weighed against a feather, and it's basically a test to see how righteous you were in this lifetime. So there's somewhere along the line. So Anubis, what I was shown in the field was that Anubis had a connection to the Sirius star system, Sirius B in particular, and a lot of beings from Sirius B, a lot of ETs, the Sirians, they basically miss their ascension window. We're just getting a little bit deeper now. They miss their ascension window. So we're going through ascension process. The entire universe is also going through an ascension process. So other ETs in different star systems are also going through their own awakening process. And many of them are more advanced than us, and some of them have been assisting us. As spirit guides and things like that. Some of you who've awakened and opened your third eye, you may have had experience with some of these beings. So Anubis had a connection to Sirius B. He actually ended up becoming a refugee because of galactic wars that basically spilled over from the Luciferian rebellion and invaded the Sirius star system. So a lot of beings came here to Earth to assist humans with our ascension timeline, and what happened was people started worshipping them as gods, and so they kind of got a bit of an ego with this, and maybe didn't always act in the best ways. Okay, they didn't act, they were sometimes a little bit out of integrity. They were maybe not always serving the Most High. Okay, just like we can do, anybody can do, we lose our connection to God sometimes. We don't always do the right thing. So, there were things that happened with Anubis along his timeline where he didn't always act in the most righteous ways. But he's very, with this particular client, he was actually in her field as a spirit guide. And he was extremely attracted to her energy because she has very, very pure architecture, very pure Christ Sophia architecture. So she's very integral with her both her masculine and feminine. Like, obviously everybody has traumas. A lot of the clients that I work with are very pure in their soul essence. You can see their mission template is really active in their field and taking shape, and they're really starting to get clarity on what it is that they're here to do on this planet. But obviously we have so many traumas and things that we need to clear, so that's why we do the work, right? So he was very attracted to her purity, and he really, really wanted to be part of what she's here to do. And she's very connected to animals in particular as well. So he was like a guardian and a protector in her field, and he serves this purpose for many people who are maybe have that connection to the Egyptian timelines and the Egyptian grids. She has a connection to that area, and it can be a bloodline connection or a past life connection, a parallel life connection. So he was, and dogs are interesting because dogs in the spirit realm, dogs are guides that protect us, but they also help to guide us. So wolves in particular are very, very protective of our feminine energy. And with Anubis, he was like a guardian at the gate. He was like a sentry. Okay, so he was really, really protecting her field, and we gave him the opportunity to create he was there was a little bit of like an energetic exchange. This can happen sometimes if you have a spirit guide that doesn't have its own source connection, doesn't have its own connection to the stream that emanates from the Godhead, which is the Christ Sophia stream, the frequency of the divine child, the masculine and feminine in sacred unification. It's like a golden stream that emanates and comes in through the the crown and all the way down the centers. And we really activate this in my course, Reclaim Your Crown. That's why that course is called that, because it's about awakening to your sovereignty. If that being doesn't have that connection, it will feed on your source light. So the relationship with that spirit guide, they can give you certain benefits, certain powers, certain protections, certain spiritual abilities, but the relationship can become parasitic if you're entering into, because you have to feed them with your energy as well, which sometimes can produce problems, like when people do a lot of occult practices and magic and things like that, and they're not sourced directly to the Godhead, they can then need to feed on other people and parasitize other people, and they can become quite narcissistic in order to feed these entities that are giving them power. So, what we saw was happening with Anubis was he was really, really wanting to, because he was so attracted to her light, he wanted to embody it within himself. And so, he's rehabilitating, and he's definitely, he's ascending. Like he's forming his own source connection now. So if you have a connection to Anubis, just tune into that and see if that resonates with you. I think overall, even though he's not always been a perfect being, like we think of when we think of someone like Yeshua, Jesus, and I also I don't believe that 100% that Jesus was like completely without sin. I mean, there's even a story in the Bible where he curses a fig tree. Y'all should look up that story. I think he definitely was human, and he had some faults sometimes. I'm not saying that he was a bad person, but I just don't think that he was like as perfect as people like to portray. So yeah, it was quite reassuring for me to see. Overall, I would say that Anubis has done, a wonderful service to humanity, and just leading people towards making more righteous choices in life so that they can get to the right place in the afterlife. So yeah, that was, yeah. Okay, so another thing that I'm seeing is there's a massive bloodline curse that's clearing from the masculines of certain bloodlines. So if you are connected to like Romani Gypsy, if you have that kind of ancestry, or even tracing back to the Banjara people of India, because that's actually, they share some ancestry with the Romani Gypsies as well, then you may be experiencing an up level in your masculine energy, whether you're a man or a woman, but it's particularly happening with the masculines. And this particular curse was a bloodline curse that basically emanated from the Chaldees in ancient Mesopotamia or ancient Babylon, which is now modern day Iraq. And it was a priest order that was running black magic on certain bloodlines that they had genetic hatred for. They just wanted to destroy and curse people who they didn't like. I don't know, for whatever reason, if it was deserved. I mean, it's not deserved for people, further down the lineage, is it? But if there was anything that was that provoked it, I don't know. I wasn't shown that, but I was shown that it was just a pure genetic hatred for certain bloodlines, and they ran curses, and the curse was basically affecting the health of the masculines, particularly around like the liver, pancreas area, and shortening their lifespan, because it was producing this extreme polarity. Now, y'all know, like, I'm not into the whole like 50-50 feminist, like men and women are the same and women should work just like men and should go out and pay bills and be a boss babe and pay 50% of the bills, because I just find that it's just a lie. Like, we're not the same as men. We give birth, we get pregnant, we have children. I do believe that men should be providers, but that where you can swing so far. I see a lot of the polarity teachings and a lot of the kind of conservative pushback movement, like the you know, the pushback against the woke agenda. A lot of people are going very like hard right with some of these polarity teachings where they're like the masculine's this and the feminine's this, and it creates more imbalances. And this particular bloodline curse I could see was causing issues in people's lineages where the women would be staying home and working, looking after children, making bread, you know, and weaving, you know, making clothes. They were still creating and they were still generating income. They were still working and creating abundance, but they were doing it together at home with the other women in their families. But the men were going out and they were like working these very difficult, very dangerous jobs, very working extremely hard. Like, let's be real, like, let's give it to the boys. They work hard for society, okay, and they run their bodies into the ground, and they need support. They need energetic support. They need that feminine healing touch that they can only get from their partners, from their wives. And, you know, when the men are always out at war or, you know, going away for long periods of time doing these really difficult, dangerous jobs, that can have very negative impact on their health. And if they don't, this is why I'm all about hieros and balancing the energies, okay? It's not good for men to be away from their families and to not have that like feminine healing energy. If they don't, like, you know, when men go out to war, they would seek like comfort women from brothels and things like that, like, you know. And I know that we, you know, will be like, oh, the toxic masculine, and that's fucked up that they do that and it's so misogynistic. Yes, it is, and it's, you know, caused massive destruction to the union template and the family template, and caused so much grief to the feminine and to children as well when men would do those things. But we're also denying the fact that men have very real needs for comfort from the feminine. It's not just about sex, it's also about just that softness and the compassion and the understanding that we bring them, and the validation, and just like soothing their you know, men are very battle hardened. Even if they just, you know, they're not going out to war, even if they're just in the next room, you know, fighting out in the corporate world, you know, it's very competitive for them. You know, they're fighting battles every day, and we are too as well. You know, obviously women, we work as well, so we understand that because many of us are cultivating our masculine energy as well. I'm just saying that it shouldn't be so imbalanced where, you know, where it separates the masculine and feminine and we don't get to be together, because we need each other. Like, you know, we need them for protection and support and to calm our nervous systems, and they need us for those reasons as well. So that curse is clearing in a lot of masculine bloodlines. So particularly, I would say it probably a lot of the European bloodlines might have a connection to that, but what I saw in the fields was that it was actually that light. It's a powerful grid update that is all over the world. People have a connection to these bloodlines, so it's not just in Europe, but it's all over the world. The Banjara people obviously migrated. They're from India originally, but they went through Romania and Europe, and then they also went other places as well. So, you know, it's a big upgrade for the masculines, and just for you as a woman also. And, you know, I feel like anybody, if you want to tune into this and if you want to clear this for yourself as well, I mean, that's how it started happening, right? People wanted to clear it within themselves, so that's what's clearing in the collective now. If you feel like you maybe have that as an ancestral curse, it doesn't even have to be an ancestral curse. If you just have that in your field, an imbalance in your masculine, feminine energies, and you want to bring that into balance, then you can receive that upgrade as well. As women, we also need to balance our masculine energy and have our own support and provision as well, so that there's not so much pressure on the men, and also just for our own sovereignty, our own protection, and our own independence. It is important that women have their own provision and their own abundance and their own ways of generating an income. Also just for the world, because women have such powerful gifts that, you know, the collective needs are our wisdom, our healing energy, our codes, just our essence in general, you know, our creativity, whatever it is that we do, we shouldn't, you know, obviously it's amazing that we can pass that on to our children, but I think moving forward as humanity starts to rebalance all these polarities, you know, it's important that women are able to share those gifts with. Okay, so I'm sensing that this video is getting really, really long. So just one last point that I wanted to make is another thing that I'm seeing clearing with not just my clients, but I'm also just seeing it collectively is wounds around avoidance, emotional avoidance. And either, you know, if you're attracted to people who are avoidant, or if you're avoidant yourself, I'm seeing a lot of people are clearing this and are starting to become aware of this. A few years ago, it was like the narcissistic codependent dynamic that was clearing. So obviously, as we heal and we all come closer into unification as a collective, we're going to see less polarization. So as you start to move more into unification, you might find that you're not so attracted to people who are narcissistic, but you might be attracted to people who are avoidant. Or you might not, if you're the avoidant person, you might not be so narcissistic, but you might still have some avoidant tendencies. So I'm seeing that's clearing with a lot of my clients as well, that tendency to find that attractive, to put up with that, and people are moving and healing more towards a secure attachment, because that is going to be super important going forward with balancing our union templates, that people are more securely attached. I'm not going to go too in depth with that. I can do other videos talking about that and how, you know, I'm assisting my clients with that, how I'm clearing it within my own union template as well. So yeah, if you want to see more about that, then just like leave a comment or smash the like button or something, so that I know that that's something that you want to see more of. Okay, as always, take care of yourselves. If you want to book a session with me, just send me a DM on Instagram and we can get you booked in for a session. I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, one love.